Ghost Trick Phantom Detective is one of those video games. That is, one of those go-to examples when discussing what the medium of video games is uniquely capable of. Here's a thought experiment. In your head, try to adapt a small piece of Ghost Trick into a snippet of prose or a movie scene. Imagine how you would write a paragraph of Sissel trying to save Lynn's life, or how you'd stage the camera when depicting how he moves between objects. The game loves to talk about cores, small glowing orbs that overlay objects or people Sissel can inhabit. It doesn't mention these things as a mere matter of gameplay, though. They exist as a real entity informing several of the characters' diegetic conversations. How would you incorporate this into your hypothetical novel/movie? Would you describe the process of Sissel moving from an antenna to a projector as the transition from one glowing orb to the next? Would you point out orbs which are too far away to indicate the limit of Sissel's reach? How would you, and this is the key part, interestingly visualize the spirit plane where Sissel speaks to the recently or formerly dead? All of these things could be done with some creativity, no doubt. But what I think we'll find is that in our effort to answer these questions and maintain the concept as authentically as we can, we'll find ourselves not describing real places, but unintentionally transcribing the layout of a video game stage, with a set of objects and mechanics and particular perspectives enabling the kinds of puzzle-solving Ghost Trick wants us to deal with. I think this would hold true even in a world where this thought experiment takes place and Ghost Trick the video game does not already exist, where we just happen to think up the same idea. Ghost Trick's premise, a non-corporeal entity who utilizes the interactivity between objects to stop people's deaths, is most intuitively realized as a video game, a medium where the interactivity between objects serves a uniquely functional purpose to the viewer. This is what gives Ghost Trick its novelty. A turn-based RPG, for example, is easy to adapt if we pretend combat is really just an abstraction of a real-time sword fight, which might be an implicit reason why many turn-based series later embrace action combat. Similarly, we recognize that it would not be essential for movie adaptations of most first-person shooters to also be from a first-person perspective. But Ghost Trick seems immune to such easy substitutions. Were Sissel's ghost tricks to be adapted, the powers would need to remain just as video gamey as they appear. The notion that Ghost Trick would be difficult to adapt certainly solidifies its reputation as one of video games' finest representatives. It also helps that it's just a conventionally good video game to begin with. Ghost Trick is heavily indebted to Ace Attorney, as will become increasingly apparent over the course of this video. The thing with Ace Attorney is, though, it's not a series which is usually talked about as a video game first and foremost. This is an understandable impulse. The gameplay isn't really the selling point, and it's not why someone's going to recommend it to you. In the same way, if you were to ask someone what the main draw of Ghost Trick is, you'd get a lot more answers regarding its central mysteries or stunning character animations than you would its object manipulation mechanics. That's too bad, because despite its many accolades, I think Ghost Trick is still rather underappreciated as a puzzler. There's an undeniable artistry in the design of Ace Attorney's testimonies. How do you make unraveling any one testimony easier or harder than another? How can simple actions like that of pressing and presenting be developed over the course of a 20 to 30 hour game? The series certainly has its answers, usually by making testimonies longer in some way. It's not at all surprising to see Ghost Trick employ similar tactics with respect to its testimony equivalent, the 4 minutes before death rescues. The rescues start straightforwardly enough. The death occurs in a singular location, and there are no more or less objects to interact with than what is initially presented to you. But starting with the super's office, the game decides to add some complexity by increasing the number of possible locations we'll need to travel to, even laying a trap location with the officer's initial call to the chicken kitchen. There's a second trap later in the game in Beauty's hideout during the Prime Minister's death. We can liken this aspect of the rescues to that of amending a testimony in Ace Attorney, expanding the number of possible choices within the encounter. You can directly import your understanding of their significance too. While presenting to an amended statement has on occasion been a trap, this is typically not the case, and likewise, switching locations during a rescue is almost always the correct choice. This location hopping is the last major innovation for a while, Ghost Trick opting to make the combination of items more specific and drawn out to increase the challenge as the chapters go by. The neat thing about Ghost Trick, though, is that the pressing of a statement, that is, the manipulation of an object, is a much more complex action happening in a dynamic time frame rather than a static one, with a meaning dependent on the object. It has a versatility baked into its design, something the game just begins to scratch at in its final third by introducing a new kind of trick. Missile can swap objects of a similar shape, meaning the same object can vary wildly in importance depending on time, place, and who we're playing as. A useless object now might become essential later once it can be made to slot in with another useless object in a pre-existing scenario. It all adds together to form the best rescue of the game, saving Cabanela from Yomiel. It's a sequence that requires a very precisely ordered set of manipulations, swapping between both Sissel and Missile, leading to the hard hat being replaced with the knit hat on the other side of the room to act as a new, softer bullet, on top of the additional constraint that Yomiel can tell if you're manipulating the scene and will immediately kill Cabanela if he finds out. So, all of the actions must be taken in the time frames in which Yomiel's back is turned. Just a fantastic integration and execution of all the game's mechanics. All of which is to say that Ghost Trick's conventional curve of steadily increasing difficulty leads to an eminently satisfying puzzle game. In fact, after the credits start to roll, one gets the sense there's still room to do so much more with these mechanics. Different kinds of deaths, different room scenarios, different spirits with different tricks. Ghost Trick offers a spacious premise begging for future iteration. The secondary way in which Ghost Trick behaves like the prototype of a powerful video game is the way in which its gameplay convincingly articulates and reinforces the point of view presented in its narrative. But to fully see that, we'll have to follow a rather lengthy line of logic. Ghost Trick is not concerned about memory as a first and foremost, but it certainly cares about memory a lot. Specifically, memory's role in the construction of a person. All the dead we encounter across the game begin by having no memory of who they are or how they died, and fittingly appear to us as shapeless wisps. Relying on hasty assumptions and limited information, they take on forms which they believe represent them, but their true selves only resurface once their memories start to return to them. The procedure happens the opposite way for Sissel, who retains the least amount of memory of any of the game's characters. As this fact is revealed to him, he ditches Yomiel's appearance and turns back into a wisp until the game's conclusion. Memory and form are inextricably linked. The game doesn't leave its discussion of memory to a scant few visuals. Some of its characters are explicitly concerned with the topic as well. Jowd has a frank conversation about it during his rescue. Not having my memories is a welcome thing. Now I don't have as much trash to take out. Why Jowd of all characters would have this perspective is obvious. Jowd doesn't like who he is, finds himself reckless and irresponsible, and by forgetting, he can shed those unsavory aspects away and create himself anew. His memories aren't the trash so much as he is. This also offers us our best insight into why Yomiel's manipulations work the way they do. He's the only one in the game who can take control of living beings, robbing them of their identity for a few brief moments. And how do the controlled people experience this manipulation? Why, they don't. Their memories are hazy, unfocused, if they even have the memory at all. Given Ghost Trick's prior argument, this only makes too much sense. If memories are representative of the self, these people will not have memories in the instances when they are no longer acting as themselves. The game's opinion on memories comes to an interesting and unexpected head during the game's climax. While finding a replacement for the Mino statue about to crush Lynn, Sissel rejects the idea of letting her get squished and using her death to turn back the clock and try again. It's initially a strange rejection, given that we've been doing things like that for the entire game to this point. Sissel frames his argument in terms of memories. Sure, the fact of her death would be erased, but her memory of it would remain, like a scar on her psyche. This follows the established rule of characters remembering themselves dying after Sissel rescues them. And if the group allows Lynn to die, the pain from that unrealized death will remain a part of her life now and forever. It will irrevocably change her as a person. Jowd is wrong to think memories are trash. They are quite the opposite. Precious mementos, which should be carefully cultivated and understood. When our ghosts create a new timeline at the end of the game, they all retain the memories of the previous timeline's 10 years. This is essential because without those memories, they would not grow. Jowd would continue to use his authority as a detective recklessly, and Yomiel only accepts his punishment for kidnapping Lynn because of his experiences during the final evening. We would not be able to avert any of the deaths we see in our rescues, if not for the experience granted to us by those ill-fated timelines where we knock a wall hanging down at the wrong angle or open a trash can too early. The ability to change is the key to Ghost Trick, a game very interested in averting fate, or so it declares in big bold text after each rescue. This is arguably where we arrive at the game's central thesis. Living creatures can choose to live their lives in one of two ways. They can either submit to their fate, or they can try to change it. Lynn is definitely in the second camp. Sissel reminds Missile of this lesson earlier in the game by telling him to create his own path if he really wants to help Lynn. By granting Sissel dominion over death, Ghost Trick taps into a latent desire I'm sure we've all experienced at some point, to recount our life story and wish some parts of it had played out differently. How many mistakes or tragedies could we have prevented with such a power? It's not so much time travel that Ghost Trick is getting at here, more so than it is promoting a kind of pro-social behavior, making the active effort to help others avoid foreseeable harm. This is the major character beat the game keeps hitting Sissel with, that he should choose to help others rather than solely concern himself with recovering his own memories. Indeed, the game's final plot twist reveals that Missile had to wait an entire 10 years in an alternate timeline because Sissel was too self-interested to assist in finding Yomiel. Ironically enough, it is only in making the opposite choice that Sissel will satisfy his personal aims. That's the nature of pro-social behavior, the game argues. It benefits everyone in the final equation. Changing fate also explains why Ghost Trick is so protective of Lynn. As that earlier quote I read showed, Lynn is someone who has already internalized the stated theme of the game. She puts her career and her life in danger constantly over the course of the evening just to save the life of one inmate. She believes Jowd is innocent, even when no one else around seems to share that opinion. But as long as her belief remains intact, Jowd's fate can be changed. Ghost Trick finds Lynn to be an aspirational character, explaining why we have to rescue her 6 different times, even earning herself the prestigious spot of last person to be saved in the game at Temsic Park. Lynn must succeed in her plan, no matter how arduous the process is. Then there's the case of Jowd. At first blush, it might seem callous to foist a theme about people either trying to change their fate or giving up and succumbing to it in a game where one of its primary characters is sentenced to death via electric chair. Is it really fair to characterize people on death row as having given up? I'd imagine most would characterize an inmate of this kind by their distinct lack of agency. Ghost Trick does its best to squirm its way out of such an interpretation. The game indicates that the nondescript country in which it is set in has not used the death penalty in years. The only reason it is even occurring in the first place is because Yomiel manipulated the Prime Minister's body into signing the order, something he wouldn't have done otherwise. Furthermore, it is made explicit numerous times that even beyond the signed order, Jowd chooses to be executed. These are tacit acknowledgments from Ghost Trick that the death penalty, a thing which very much assumes the subject in question cannot and will not change, is antithetical to its stated theme. It doesn't change the fact that this is still a pretty evasive invocation of state-sponsored execution. Helping people commit suicide is typically not what an event like this is reserved for, but we can clearly see how this choice relates Jowd to Ghost Trick's overall argument. If people are truly the directors of their own destinies, the game has no choice but for Jowd to advocate for his own execution. Jowd is willing to accept death because he believes himself to be a genuine murderer, not for the specific crime he's been convicted of, but for his actions taken while trying to capture Yomiel 10 years ago. Jowd is convinced that if the meteor fragment hadn't killed Yomiel at just the right moment, he would have shot him dead instead. This interpretation is proven correct when we ourselves visit Temsic Park and redirect the meteor fragment's trajectory, leaving Zhao to his own devices. Zhao's fate is to become a murderer. Naturally, in concordance with the theme, we manage to stop the bullet and prevent Zhao from taking a life, giving him a chance to learn from his mistake and act more responsibly in the future. There is no need to give up his life for a fate he can choose to change. Which lastly brings us to Yomiel. Given that Ghost Trick intentionally confuses Sissel's identity and appearance with him, it's fitting that the two should have similarly drawn character arcs. While Sissel believed that he could only get what he desired by focusing on his own self-interest, Yomiel came to a similar conclusion after a decade of isolation, stuck in a moment of death thanks to the unique properties of the Temsic fragment. I existed in this world, no question about that, but nobody noticed my presence. What good were my powers? They didn't help anybody. Yomiel's special power is to manipulate living objects, a tool only relevant to make other people do things they wouldn't have done of their own volition. A violation, more like. Yomiel can only work towards his own benefit, because that's all his powers are good for, or so he believes. Not unexpectedly, Ghost Trick wants to prove Yomiel's assertions wrong. His power can be used to help others, if he chooses to apply it correctly. Once again, observe Temsic Park. After Sissel and Missile work together to buy Lin a few extra seconds, one more action must be taken. For the first and only time in the story, Yomiel aids in the rescue, hopping into his own body and manipulating it so that he is crushed by Mino instead of Lin. In that moment, Yomiel definitively and undeniably uses his power to help someone. And like with Sissel choosing to prioritize others, or Lin's defiance to prove Zhao's innocence, it is Yomiel's choice to put himself in harm's way for the sake of another that finally allows fate to be changed. Isn't it shocking how efficient this climax is in combining every single critical argument the game is making? All of these beats with all of these characters happen within mere moments of each other. From our brief survey of the characters, it's evident how powerful Ghost Trick thinks choosing to help others can be, a fulfilling action both for the self and for all those around you. None of that is what makes Ghost Trick a particularly interesting game, though. Is this not the argument of so many different stories? No, Ghost Trick is interesting because it offers a rather novel interpretation as to why prosocial behavior behaves the way it does. Here's where we finally connect the gameplay back to the game's central thesis. Core to Ace Attorney is a fascination with minutiae, a belief that even the smallest detail imaginable has the power to turn the world upside down. A fingerprint in the wrong orientation, a handle along the rim of a milk bucket, an open zipper at just the wrong time. By understanding this minutiae, a chain reaction of logic will cascade down to the truth, the place where turnabouts can be realized and fate can be changed. Ghost Trick takes this same exact logic to its extreme. In the world of Ghost Trick, every single person is connected via a string of minutiae, whether those strings are obvious or not. Invisible telephone lines wire together even the most distant locations and peoples. The structure of the game follows suit, the first half introducing us to a wide variety of seemingly irrelevant characters, only for its second half to demonstrate how each character relates to the evening's happenings by only a thin degree of separation. And with the raising of a crossing gate or the swirl of a fan, the minutiae can be made to change, pushing or pulling those found in its orbit. Ghost Trick's worldview is fully encapsulated by Camilla's contraption, a Rube Goldberg machine the game is transfixed by. From the innocuous flick of a light switch rises an entire mechanism of life and death. In one universe, the contraption is a celebration of life, a birthday. In another, the contraption is a harbinger of death, the falling dominoes of a murder weapon in action. The difference separating those two universes? A single manipulation. Everyone is connected by Rube Goldberg machines of varying lengths, Ghost Trick argues, and so the question is whether or not that machine ends with Cupid facing the party poppers or him facing the gun. Every 4-minute rescue underscores this idea. In the chicken kitchen, we witness Lin being flattened by a giant chicken model caused by a van crashing through the window of the restaurant. We learn that the van crashed because the driver was rendered incapacitated due to a loud signal blaring through his headphones. Following the machine back to its source, we uncover the waitress carrying the very object that will produce said noise. Yeah, she's probably planting the ladybug. Now that I think about it, it's this waitress's meddling that starts the whole chain of events. The detective wouldn't have gotten his ears blown out and wouldn't have crashed. In other words, we're witnessing it with our own eyes, the cause of a huge disaster slowly being planted in a chicken. Cupid turns toward the gun because of a single piece of chicken. With a world this subtly interconnected, it's easy to see why Ghost Trick believes it's imperative to choose to help others. Our actions will have consequences far beyond our intended reach, because we cannot even hope to perceive the full extent of our behavior in the moment. Yomiel's manipulations are so sinister because they are an intentional planting of ladybugs in chicken. His choice to manipulate Camilla and have Cupid shoot his arrow at the gun doesn't just lead to her mother dying and her family suffering, it leads to an entire 10 years of grief, pulling in Lynn and Cabanella and Missile in its wake. That is why we must make the choice to help others. We must make sure to set up the kind of world where our connections improve each other instead of weighing us down. This is precisely the reason why Sissel does not have to choose between helping others and recovering his memories. By taking the time to help those around him, Sissel fosters the very connections that enrich us all. In this way, Ghost Trick finds a world full of tiny, imperceptible connections comforting. It is a world that is ultimately explainable and logical, though we may not fully grasp that at the time. An existence with a traceable line of cause and effect. The removal of this causality is painful. It is a world of discreteness and isolation, where turnabouts become impossible and fate cannot be averted. It is the very same kind of world Yomiel experienced on the day-to-day, shifting between life and death from a random meteor with arbitrary powers, a rogue element foreign to the system and completely unforeseeable. I wanted you to know what it was like to lose everything you cared about. I wanted you to feel the same pain I felt. It was the twisted wish of a mind poisoned by infinite loneliness. The world offered by that meteor is, on some level, a world of inexplicable magic. And if there's one thing I've learned from future Shu Takumi games, it's that a world of magic is a world of persecution and defined, circumscribed roles. A fearful thing indeed. Ghost Trick ends on a charming note. From just that single night as a human, I got a glimpse into their world. And I learned something. Their fates, their lives, they were all interconnected, somewhere, somehow, in some way. It suits me just fine to curl up and watch the strange and beautiful patterns of their lives as they unfold. It's an effective reframing of the game. It positions Ghost Trick as a sort of anthropological study, made by a curious observer mapping out the intricacies of human interaction. The connections found in the ghost world are merely notes for further review. The cat, our researcher, is unable to interact with the humans directly. He cannot tell them he is bored or hungry or that they should stand somewhere else. Instead, he must influence their behavior the only way an animal can, through the pursuing of a mouse, the scattering of a loose paper, the knocking over of a vase. To study his subjects, these manipulations will be necessary. The reshaping of fate, one tiny object at a time.